Welcome back to the Daily Dope Show. My name is Brando, the Weed Commando, and I'm back for maybe one more video or two. You never know. I'm just, I've kind of moved on in life, and I'm no longer in this, in the weed game. There is no weed game anymore. All there is anymore is people that are like me that are still growing weed as a little bit more than a hobby. Not necessarily sure if I'm gonna actually sell it or not. I don't care anymore. That's not a big deal. It's not important. But what I am doing is I'm seeing how bad people like me, who grew all the way through full prohibition, who helped pioneer and revolutionize the entire thing, the genetic profiles, and constantly every time you turn around, people like me were making things better when it was full prohibition. And it's getting to the point where the younger people don't understand what full prohibition even is, or what it meant, or how it was to live in or operate in. And so there's not a whole lot of people like me left, As far as, I don't grow indoors anymore, haven't in a while. And when it comes to that, there's even less of those around, because you literally can't afford to keep the lights on in the market. And if you've seen the black market in places where weed's been legal for a while, and there's a lot of weed stores, there's a weed store on every corner in most towns. Your market is garbage. You don't have a market. The old market was that all the growers grew different stuff. Maybe some people had the same stuff. A lot of different people were growing different stuff, and the next thing you know, it was a market. It truly was the last free market in the capitalist world, before the corporate takeover took over everything. And when the corporate takeover came along and took over weed, it was with the help of the government. So, the first thing that struck my attention to make this video was that I see that the governor in Michigan is talking about some new higher taxes on the supplier side of the industry. I gotta tell you, man. And the second thing was that an old activist in the scene, he was threatened with many years of jail time when he was arrested, finally, after his many years of activism, which is highly respected activism. But what happened is eventually even he, fell to the powers that be and became part of the corporate machine and decided to grow the government weed. And quite frankly, in a place where there's already an oversaturation in the market of people doing it. And, I'm not here to judge that person or people that do this, people like him that have done this. But I am going to make some comments about it. And the first comment is you're growing weed for the government now. I don't care how you slice and dice it. This isn't the old wild, wild west like it used to be. This isn't anarchy. This isn't libertarians. This isn't people that have a high respect for ultimate freedom and don't believe in the taxation extortion system of the government. Weed was one of the last things that there was for people like that. So if you think that you're some kind of purveyor of the old don't want to say outlaw, but it really was. If you was doing what I was doing in the 80s and 90s and 2000s until it was legalized later on down the line, medical in 2008, I think it was, maybe 9. I don't know. It's been so long. 2010, who knows? It was a long time ago. Medical marijuana was finally legalized in Michigan. And if you were doing it before then, the thing that's going on right now is not anything like what we were doing back then. All right? And if you were growing hydro, or you were using, dangerous chemicals to fertilize your plants, you weren't really one of us. You were an opportunist. And you were, I don't want to say a gold digger, but that's what you thought you were doing. You thought you were going after the big money by growing a plant, money just growing off of trees. You didn't respect what came before you as far as the ducking and dodging of helicopters and narcs, and you don't know what it's like to have done guerrilla growing and running multiple grow houses in the underground, and you don't know anything about the breeding and organic growing that a lot of the old growers like me respectively and respectfully still adhere to. What you did was you were chasing the almighty dollar. And what I always said about people like that is if you got into the weed game for that, then you don't deserve anything out of it. And if you're there, and it's a lot of those people, they were the first ones to dry up in the medical marijuana world when that started getting hard, and they definitely disappeared faster than lightning when legalization hit. They're not doing anything now, and they never did anything that was worth mentioning. And I'm going to leave it at that. So then you have this new era of gold diggers and market stealers who came along not after the first petition drive, which the state denied, not after the second petition drive, which the state denied, but during the third petition drive, where the language of the petition was a little more vague than the one before it, and in order for it to get all the funding and whatnot necessary for the petition drive itself to be successful, there had to be a coalition. And the coalition involved a bunch of, I'm just going to flat out say it, Democratic Party operatives posing as weed activists or weed, people that cared about legalizing weed for this reason or that reason. And they always held the highest reasoning as being, we're going to get rid of the felony penalties. And that was basically why I had to support it to the very end, even though I disagreed with everything that they were doing, including when they decided to let a bunch of crooked corporate cronies come in and write the rules and further write the rules later on after the passage of the petition and the bill became law. They were the ones driving the bus on every aspect of how the rollout would look, who would be involved, what you would have to do to be in the new thing. And if you remember, I don't know if you remember, because not too many people watch these videos, but a lot of people did watch my videos, and I reported every single step of the way when Michigan legalized weed. And what I reported about was how the corporate takeover was puppeteering the entire thing. And in that you had old crooked cops that decided that they were going to be involved, and you had all these people that were lobbyists. You had people that were lobbyists for pharmaceutical. You had people lobbyists for weed in other states. You had all these people were making the rules and making sure that people like me didn't have a seat at the table, would not have a chance at getting a license, and that was that. You know, that was the end of it for me. Once I looked at the finer and reported on the finer details as they came out of the regulations and the taxation and the registration fees and all the fees for everything you have to do, and the demand upon you that you do certain marketing, and I mean I reported on all of it, the packaging, everything, all the way down to how the weed was being packaged, which is absolutely insane compared to just putting something in a Ziploc bag. But, younger people don't understand this, and they look at me and they think I'm just some old, out-of-touch idiot that stuck in his old ways, and, maybe I am. Maybe that is what I'm talking about here. Maybe that is what this is about. But also, I'm not jealous that of this evil corporate takeover just destroyed my life, pretty much. I'm not envious that somebody's involved in that or not. That to me, you're not doing what I would have done, and what I did is something totally different, because I couldn't do that. I have still to this day not bought a single stitch of weed from any of these weed stores, which I'm not going to call the name that they call them. It's absolutely ridiculous. And the marketing, the absolutely lame marketing, the names of all these businesses, just everything about the new industry is absolute garbage. It's absolute trash. And if you want to be involved in that garbage trash so that you could grow the government some weed, that's on you, man. That's your thing. But I'm here to tell you that it's not. There's no future in it. This plays out like everything else in end stage capitalism, where at first everything does okay, and then the market gets oversaturated, and then the government decides that it's time to start getting some more of that money for themselves, which they've already got their finger in the pot way too much into the cookie jar. This is government weed you're growing if you're doing this. That's what that is. You're not growing because it's for the cause. You're not growing because you're respecting. And quite frankly, if you're just somebody that owns a dispensary, you're no better than some person that was standing on the corner slinging nickel bags back in the day. You're actually worse, because now you're just the government's little stooge selling weeds to get the tax so that you can give that money to the government. I mean, there's absolutely no way that you can look at it any other way. And they want to raise the taxes even higher on suppliers. I mean, I'm not going to pull up the article and look at the numbers, but it's astoundingly high. And it's sticker-shockingly ridiculous. And the government already takes such a giant cut of all this weed being grown, processed, transported, sold. Every step of the way, they have regulations that are super high-priced. They have yearly renewals. They have taxes every inch of the way that this is being done. The government. You're growing for the government. And I don't want to name names and get detailed so that you might think you know who I'm talking about. But these are the same people that wanted to put you in prison for a long time. Like I said, I'm not going to get specific about this. But you stood to go to prison for the thing that now all you have to do is pay some money, set things up properly, which costs a lot of money, put cameras all in your area that the government can look at anytime they want, Be prepared to do government audits at any given time. Like, you literally are a government employee. The government that was going to throw you in a cage for doing this when it was not expediently some kind of a capitalist dream or whatever. You know, this is worse than working at McDonald's, what you're doing. And I'm not here to judge, and I'm not here to call people out. I'm just trying to tell you that what destroyed my situation was that, you know, after the legalization happened and slowly the stores started popping up everywhere, you know, I didn't have any clearance. So if I had to just rely on really good old customers, that, you know, that wasn't enough. I needed the runners, and you know, I'm not gonna get arrested admitting to crimes or whatever. But that was the old days. The new days are that you're running this just like it's some kind of everyday business. You have suppliers coming in, they want to sell you stuff, you buy stuff, you know, and you're just if you're a dispensary guy, you're just the guy at the trading post giving your money to the government. How much money are you giving to the government? I mean, just someone having a regular job is giving too much money to the government, especially when you know what they're doing with the money. You know, I don't want to get into that. That's a whole other video on a different channel. Apparently these days I can't really mix and mingle the fact that you're giving the government money to blow people up overseas and, you know, pay for propaganda, pay for the censorship that's been going on. There's a whole bunch of stuff that you shouldn't want to give the money that you're making off of your life's work straight to the people that just tried to throw you in prison for doing the same exact thing. You're no victimless, 100% victimless crime. You can't call it a crime if there's no victim. But somehow, when you were doing it back 10 years ago, you could have and almost did go to prison for decades. And the people that wanted you there are who you're giving your money to now. You're giving your labor over to them. Doesn't make much sense, man. And to the people out there, you know, that are buying weed at the store, I can't blame you for my situation. But you got to realize too that this isn't what it used to be. All right, weed isn't what it used to be. And I've made many videos about this too. Weed isn't something where you just grow it, no problem, and it goes off without a hitch. It's one of the most intense horticultural experiences there is, indoor growing, especially because it's like you're creating a microcosm that's really favorable for mold, bugs, and the whole time Prohibition was going on, the government was developing super bugs and super molds, and simultaneously also developing super pesticides and super antifungals that were super dangerous chemicals. And during the time before full legalization, when Prohibition was still a thing and medical marijuana was kind of a wild, wild west here in Michigan, a lot of people were growing hydro and using these chemical fertilizers and using these chemical pesticides and anti-mold stuff. And quite frankly, it was gross. You know, people like me that grew organic the whole way through was disgusted by it. You know, we were looking at you people that did that as basically money grubbing, like lunatics that didn't care about anybody's health. All you cared about was the almighty dollar, and that was it. So you wasn't doing anybody any favors, and you wasn't doing the weed market any favors. You wasn't doing the weed world any favors. You wasn't making yourself some kind of known person for what you were doing. And now it's even worse because the regulations, at least in Michigan, and I've looked at many others, it's basically the same. you can't even grow full organic anymore. So you're going to have to use some level of chemicals, either growing with fertilizers or pesticides and whatnot. And I feel sorry for people that believe the propaganda. And like I said, I've been reporting about this particular propaganda many times. I didn't uncover it, but I've shared articles where they talk about how there was recalls for mold, recalls for pesticides, recalls for pests, literally bugs in the weed, all these things going on, and it's a corruption thing. It wasn't just that they found the stuff in the weed, it was that they found bribes going on between labs, regulators, weed companies, and this has been going on since California, Oregon, Colorado, then Michigan. So this has been going on for the whole time legalization's been going on. And it hasn't stopped. And the articles keep coming talking about if you buy that weed from those shady underground growers, then it's going to be contaminated, or they're going to be using chemicals, and they're going to be doing this and that. And that's what they're doing. That's the projection, where they're like, oh, come and buy our shit. Don't buy it from those guys. It's going to be dirty. You're going to be unhealthy if you smoke that poisonous stuff. Meanwhile, the regulations clearly state that you can't use certain organic compounds, organic things. And meanwhile, the recommended list of things you can use has all sorts of stuff in there that I would never, in my wildest dreams, spray on a weed plant. So that's where you're at now. If you're buying weed from the weed stores and you're trusting the TV guy or the TV lady, like you should never do for any reason, but now all of a sudden you trust them that the weed at the store is clean and the weed outside the store is dirty. That's the most ridiculous thing about this whole thing. But I can't get too much into that because what's the point? I mean, there is no underground market anymore, and the little bit that there is basically people have it handled, People have certain people that'll buy their stuff, and they'll keep going at it as much as they can kind of afford to do. But as far as I'm concerned, the corporate takeover was really the government takeover. And now it's all government weed. And we know, after looking at what the FDA and the CDC has done over the last few decades, why would anyone trust that? Why would that be better than what you could get from somebody that's been farming and doing real agriculture stuff their whole life? Doesn't make sense, does it? But what really makes sense is they can't have that kind of competition. They can't have side-by-side examples of stuff that's better than what they can make at fractions of the cost, which is what it ended up happening, is people that, the original people, the old gangsters like me, old school people that been doing this since way back in the day, way back in the Reagan era, way back in the Bush 1 era, all the way through the Clinton, and Democrat, Republican, none of them ever wanted to lift a finger to legalize weed. They didn't want anything to do with it. John Boehner was the biggest anti-weed person. He was a huge tobacco lobby guy at one time. Never once did he lift a finger to legalize marijuana. But as soon as he retired and marijuana was being legalized everywhere, what did he do? He became a weed lobbyist. And started one of the biggest, most corrupt weed outfits in the country. And I don't know what to really say about all this anymore. I'm kind of exhausted my talking points long ago about it. But of course I still grow and smoke my own weed, because I would never trust anybody else to do that. I would never buy weed from these, cutthroat stores that cut us out of that don't give two shits about a disabled veteran like myself, who, that was my livelihood, that was my life, that was my hobby, that was everything to me. and it just got taken away like nothing. And, I think I would assume that if the owner of one of these big conglomerate dispensaries in Michigan seen this video, they'd basically just laugh at me and ridicule me in the comment section. And I don't care. I'm not out here, really, like I said, I'm not jealous of you. I don't care about what you're doing. And I don't get involved in these social circles of marijuana that's evolved into, I don't even know what, a bunch of like half-wits sitting around, trying to brainstorm the next sexual innuendo to throw on a billboard to sell weed. Because you guys have no way to stand out. You're just a store. You're worse than Walmart. And your product is, in my opinion, your product is dangerous and garbage. And to the people that buy it, like I said, I can't help that. That's where you have to go to get weed. Weed is a sacred herb. It's a medicine. It's not to be taken lightly as some kind of just stupid stoner gag thing, which is basically or aphrodisiac, which I don't even know if weed is that for most people, but for sure, it's definitely not some garbage thing that the marketing appears to make it sound like. But, like I said, the saturation of the market right now is beyond Walmart levels. So the big weed stores are definitely like Walmart. And I'm sure if you go down to like just the independent people that grow their own and sell it right out their own store, probably have a little more respect from me. But you're still growing government weed. You're a government agent now. Have fun with that. And it's sad. It's just sad. And I don't have any more things to say about this other than, it breaks me to see people that I respected and thought were true activists are now leaning into this corporate world of government weed. This is definitely not how we envisioned what legalization would be like when I was growing up. Back in the 80s and early 90s when the underground was at its peak and I was growing and everybody was trying to do their thing and learn as much as they could about it, one thing was certain. We didn't know what legalized weed would look like. We just knew that someday in our lifetimes it would happen. You had like Ron Paul and a lot of other people in politics, Hollywood people. It wasn't a lot, but every once in a while someone would talk about it, and that was something. Because before then, it was nothing but, Nixon era propaganda about weed being the most dangerous, public enemy #1 drug on the planet and all this crap. And the boomers they bought full line, hook, line, and sinker into the psyop and was so afraid of weed that they quit smoking weed in the 70s and early 80s and, put on their straight person routine and never looked back and told their kids not to smoke weed, it's bad. They were full in on, that was the psyop for them, and they were victims of it. But nonetheless, my generation, Generation X or whatever, we didn't care about the penalties. We didn't care about the alienation because, weed was smeared as some dirty thing, stupid guy, whatever. We just pushed forward, evolved, helped evolve weed itself, and for all of the work we did and all of the dangers we faced of getting caught, what is our reward? Nothing. To get totally shut out of the industry and to watch the industry become the government. The same government that made it unbearably difficult to do my whole life. All right, that's all I got. Peace.